Here we go. Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being on time, for joining us today. I see a lot of black squares for my students, and so if I could get some faces, that would be lovely, so that me and Mr. Michael D'Italia are not talking to ourselves. That would be great. So please put your cameras on. We're going to be doing a lot of talking today. Right now, however, you're going to be doing some listening. Thank you, Sabria. Right now, we're going to be doing some listening because, as you see, we have Mr. Michael D'Italia, who is our Director of Student Success Initiatives here at Rutgers-Camden. And he has come to talk to us about a really cool opportunity. Before we get into the portion of our workshop today, which will be covering things like social media, networking through social media platforms, he's going to tell us about a really awesome opportunity that I think a lot of you would benefit from, and I encourage you to consider. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. D'Italia, and if we could do some like virtual claps as he, joins us, comes and presents, that would be lovely.
Hey everyone, how are you today? Sabria, that was a lovely golf clap. You've got that on lock. Thank you very much. So I want to start by saying y'all are better people than me, because I think as the sun has come out, I am just so tempted to suddenly come down with like a 24-hour stomach bug and get out and catch some rays. So I'm glad that we can meet in all of this space briefly. My camera was on mute because I was throwing my boots on so I could take my daughter out for a walk after our time together today. One important point of clarification. The last Mr. in my family was my grandfather, and he died back in 2006. So it's just Michael. I am Michael D'Italia, the Director of Student Success Initiatives for the Division of Student Academic Success, which is just a fancy way of saying that I have the privilege to work across campus to get people involved with experiential learning and undergraduate research, taking the knowledge that students get from the classroom and applying it in real world contexts where they can have a positive impact on their world today, rather than just waiting till graduation. I also have the opportunity to oversee our Institute for Leadership and Action, which is what I'm here to talk to you about today very briefly. Sarah told me that I only have about an hour and a half to go through my presentation, so I'll try and be as fast as possible. She's laughing, that's how I know she's paying attention. Quick question, can I get thumbs up reactions or something if you've ever heard of the Leadership Institute or the Institute for Leadership and Action on campus? Awesome. Great. So I'm glad that for most of you, I'll be your first foray into what I think is one of the coolest spaces on campus, and a space that is absolutely committed to cultivating leadership amongst our students at Rutgers-Camden. And so that's the long and short of it is the Institute for Leadership and Action is a community of students who are really committed to growing together as leaders. Coming from all over campus, what we do is form a cohort every year of about 25 students that we call our Student Leaders Cohort. And this is a group of students who work together throughout the academic year and frankly throughout the rest of their academic journey at Rutgers to support one another in growing as leaders. And so to that end, we have weekly conversations where we're discussing our practice of leadership, where we are leading. We have students who are on the executive boards for student organizations. We have students who work very closely with local nonprofit organizations. We have students who are part or full-time professionals who are really practicing their leadership within the context of their future career right now. But wherever they're coming to us from, we take our we take our student leaders and put them in a space together where we can learn, where we can share, where we can question and challenge together, with the idea that it's just like going to the gym. It's easier to get your swole on when you have a friend along for the journey. And so rather than everybody working in isolation to serve as leaders, we are really convening regularly to help each other become better leaders. And in addition to that, the Institute for Leadership and Action and our Student Leaders Cohort works very hard to try and grow capacity for leadership across the Rutgers-Camden campus. If you're on Engage, you'll see that we offer weekly workshops or panel opportunities that dive into some of the essential concepts around leadership. All of those workshops are student run and student developed. Again, the idea behind the Institute for Leadership in Action is that students are becoming content experts in the practice of leadership. So when we're talking about leadership styles, it's not just me sitting in front of a Zoom room for an hour telling you what it means to be leaders, but rather students who are actively practicing leadership, sharing their experiences and how they connect to some key concepts and practices. So why am I here telling you about all of this today? A, because I believe that every one of us is a leader in some context, and because leadership is a set of skills and characteristics rather than ingrained or inborn characteristics. I believe that everybody not only is serving as a leader somewhere, but is capable of becoming a better version of the leader that they are today. And the other reason I'm here is because right now we're currently accepting applications for our 2021 student leaders cohort. So we are looking for students who want to join our cohort for next year, who really want to take a deep dive in what it means to be a leader within your own communities. We don't start with any cookie cutter vision of what a person should look like as a leader or what they should be doing as a leader, but rather we try to meet every individual where they're at and come to a collective vision of what leadership would look like through our various contexts. It's a come as you are and come as you are able cohort. We don't have many restrictions around our application process other than a professed commitment to serving as a leader somewhere. So there is no GPA requirement for the student leaders cohort. The only requirement that we have is that you want to participate in the community and that you can identify a place where you're currently serving as a leader. And that could be on campus, again, through a student organization within EOF or TRIO or another co-curricular program. You could be serving as a leader in your faith community or some other community organization to which you belong outside of Rutgers. You could be serving as a leader in your household, working to support your siblings or your children as it may be. I have a 7-year-old. She has challenged me to grow in my practice of effective leadership on a daily basis. I think I've netted more failures in that practice in dealing with her than I have anywhere else in my life. But the idea is we're all leaders and we all have a vested interest in becoming better leaders together. And so our student leaders cohort is a space where, for those of us who are particularly committed to that practice, we can find a supportive community that's invested in our success, that is very intentional about connecting us back to our other communities, right? Whether it's EOF, whether it's a student org, whether it's some space outside of Rutgers-Camden, so that you can be the very best leader that you're capable of becoming in those spaces, not someday in the future, but right here, right now. So I've said a lot in a little bit of time, and I am an only child, so I tend to always come from just like my own headspace, and I don't always address questions that people might have. So I'm going to do a couple of things. First, I just put a link in the chat for our application for the 2021 cohort. Applications are being accepted until April 4th. And as part of the application process, we do ask that you provide a letter of recommendation from somebody who can speak to your potential for leadership. They don't have to be a member of the Rutgers-Camden staff or faculty, but they have to have known you for long enough to say, I think this person would really thrive in this program, and here's why. Other than that, the initial application is a pretty simple process. We ask for some contact information, and we ask for you to share a little bit about what you think leadership means, and particularly about what it means for you to be a leader. From there, select applicants are going to be invited to group interviews during the month of April, and our intention is to notify successful candidates of their admission into the 2021 cohort by the week of April 26th. So there's a quick turnaround time on this conversation. And then from there, again, we're a come as you're able community. We do a lot of we meet over the summer as people are able to talk about the upcoming academic year, establish goals for ourselves and how we want to thrive. That doesn't mean there are weekly scheduled meetings that you have to show up at or you get in trouble. It's the summer and we're all humans, and we want to be outside of Rutgers-Camden, I think, much more than we want to be inside Rutgers-Camden. But we do some pre-work over the summer that's really focused on you, your interests, how you want to grow, so that once the fall semester comes, we're all hitting the ground running, with accomplishing those goals that we've set for ourselves collectively. But that's really the big sales pitch. Happy to address any questions that you have, anything that I might not have been clear about. If you're asking yourself, what is leadership? We should probably have that conversation in this space. But what can I do? What can I do to provide you with the information that you might be interested in having? I'm an introvert. I'm cool with the uncomfortable Zoom silence. So we'll give it a couple more seconds. If you don't feel like unmuting yourself, you can throw questions in the chat. Happy to address them. Sometimes I'm thoroughly comprehensive. Today might not be one of those days, though. So again, really here for you. So yeah, questions?
I don't.
Gina, you know what? That's helpful. Just saying no in and of itself is engaging here. So I know where you're at.
Yeah, I'm just here listening. Actually, I thought this was a workshop named "Should I Post That?" So then when I started listening, I'm like, no, this is not it. But maybe I should still be here listening to see what this is about. So that's what made me. I was thrown off guard because I thought this was "Should I Post That?"
Gotcha. And it is. You are in the right space. You're on the right channel.
It is?
But yes, it is. So I asked Sarah if I could come in and give a quick pitch because I just wanted to make sure that y'all were aware of the opportunity for our 2021 Student Leaders Cohort, because I think all of you potentially have a space in that cohort, and would love to connect with you if you're interested. So I guess the next thing that I'm going to do is throw my email address in the chat. In case you want to reach out after this conversation with any follow-up questions that might arrive. I'm also going to direct you to our website if you want to learn more about the program there. And so I get it. I'm not on social media, so I have very little value to contribute to the overall conversation today, but did just want to come out and share briefly about the Institute and our Student Leaders Cohort. And if I can close, Sarah, just with one other quick sales pitch. Regardless of whether or not you choose to apply for our cohort, one of the things that I always want to be very upfront and clear with about Rutgers students is that each one of you really is a leader somewhere in some context to someone. Unfortunately, oftentimes in our lives along the way, we have people who tell us that we are not leaders. We have people who limit our understanding of who we are and our vision of what we could be. So let me just call BS on any of those messages that you may have received up to this point. Each one of you is a leader in some context. Each one of you was born with particular skills and qualities that you can lean on to be an effective leader. But more importantly, each one of you has a mind and a capacity that's capable of growing in your practice of leadership. I don't know if you've looked around lately, but the world's kind of on fire, sometimes literally. We need better leaders now. We don't want you to wait until you get your degree and go off into that, whatever the real world is that people talk about sometimes. We want you serving as effective leaders today on our campus, in your home communities, with the various groups to which you belong, because we desperately need good leaders. And so the Student Leaders Cohort is an opportunity for you to grow in your leadership ability. But if that's not the right fit for you, I'd encourage you to check out the Institute for Leadership in Action anyway. Through our workshops, through the activities that we get to plan on doing in person, maybe even for the upcoming academic year. We want you to be involved. We want you to find your place within our community, wherever that might be. So you've got the link to the application, you've got my email address, you've got the website for the Institute. Hit us up, however is the best way for you to do so. Would love to engage in a conversation with you about how you can grow into your potential for leadership.
Are you going to be having any workshops that explain more about leadership? I know I want to be a leader, but I'm still trying to grasp all this information from Rutgers before I can step out into that role. So are you going to be presenting more, another like a workshop of your own where it's more entailed?
Absolutely. Every single week of the semester, except for breaks, we have a workshop going on. So if you're not doing anything at 5 o'clock tonight or during the free period tomorrow, would invite y'all to come out to our workshop on professional communication and networking. Ultimately, the role of a leader is grounded in the ability to communicate effectively with others, which means speaking and listening, right? And so we're going to have a conversation about how to do that tonight and tomorrow, and also have a conversation around how do we think strategically about our personal networks, those people with whom we interact, with whom we share values, maybe share visions, and how can we organize ourselves to make change collectively. And so Gina and everybody else in the room, that's a great question, Gina, thank you. Check us out on Engage. We've got something going on every week of the semester, except next week, because it's spring break and y'all need that break, I think.
Yes.
That sounds like a fantastic segue from this workshop to your workshops, Michael. And I think, so this entire semester, we've kind of been, revolving conversations for the sophomore cohort specifically around communication, how you present yourself, how people perceive you, how to effectively communicate, and kind of leveraging that to transition into their junior years, because these are mostly, it's not exclusive, but mostly rising sophomores. And so I really want to echo, if anybody is interested in content like that, please by all means, check it out. And so there's the links in the comments. I will be happy to share links as well after our workshop is concluded. But definitely, I think that this is just a good way to plant a seed, to introduce you all to opportunities that are outside of EOF, right? Because EOF is often a little bit of a bubble. And so we want you to begin branching out outside of that bubble. So again, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And thank you for coming and giving us a lovely, lovely sales pitch, as you would say. But I don't think that anyone needs to be sold on this. I think that this is something that is a next step in a progression in everybody's experience. So it doesn't have to be leadership, but that's sure a great place to start, right? So I encourage you all to check that out. But again, thank you, Michael. Can we all golf clap or Zoom clap?
Thank you, Michael.
Absolutely my pleasure to be here. And let's not call it a sales pitch, we'll call it an invitation.
Yes,
because just like you have a home in EOF, you have a home in the Institute for Leadership and Action, and would love to figure out what that fit looks like. So I hope you all enjoy the rest of this conversation. Hope you can come out either tonight or during the free period tomorrow to our professional communication and networking workshop. And we've got a lot of other interesting topics coming up over the rest of the semester too. So check us out on Engage.
But Michael, you said, can we come out? Is it a Zoom session?
Yes, so everything is virtual right now, along with the rest of the university. But for what it's worth, our workshops are not lecture-based. Again, we're all about the practice of leadership rather than thinking about leadership. So when we're talking about professional communication and networking tonight, there's going to be hands-on activities where you get to practice that, that are going to have value beyond just the conversation tonight. If you've ever struggled to describe your vision, your passion, or who you are to a potential employer, to a member of faculty or staff on campus, come to the workshop, because you're going to walk out with an elevator pitch that you can use to describe yourself when you're applying for jobs, when you're applying for the student leaders cohort, whenever you're taking whatever the next steps are into your thriving for your junior year. So practical value, right?
Okay. I'll
Cool.
see you at 5. I'll see LinkedIn at 3. I'll be in class from 6 to 7. So yeah, I'll see you at 5.
All right. Do me
Then
a
I'll have
favor, Gina.
class after.
Get out in the sun too today. Today is a blessing and a gift. So make sure to do that as well. But cool. Thank you all again for your time. And
I don't want to miss nothing.
I can appreciate that. FOMO is a real thing, right? But y'all have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you again for your time. It's been great to see y'all.
Thank you.
Bye, Michael. Have a good walk.
Looking forward to it.
See you later. All right. So again, that was just a little bit of an introduction to an opportunity that we have happening at the university. As much as I know that we are all siloed in this odd bubble that we live in, there's still a lot of things happening, right? There's still a lot of ways to get involved and build your resume, right? And so for the most of you that are sophomores in this workshop, that is very important. And ultimately, people who aren't sophomores in this workshop, that is still very important, right? And so if you're struggling with ways to get involved or don't know how to build your resume or just aren't sure where to start, please, 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 please make sure that you are talking with your EOF counselor, with any other mentors or counselors or advisors that you have, because now is the time to begin to have those conversations. Maybe now is not the time for action for you, and that's okay, but we should start to have those conversations. So we're going to take a shift. And now we'll get into our workshop content, and we are sort of running out of time, so I might have to skip over a couple of things, but that's okay. Let me go ahead and share my screen, and then we will get a move on. Okay, nope, I'm sharing sound. What is happening? Here we go, sharing, there we go. Okay, here we go. So, move y'all over here, and then I will click on something to present. What's happening? There we go. My computer is like a little sleepy today. Okay, so we're talking about social media. We're talking about networking through social media and how to do that effectively. We're going to be kind of dabbling into social media etiquette as well, because I think that that's a necessary conversation that we should have. In addition to just how to utilize these platforms for professional networking skills and whatnot, we do need to talk a little bit about social media etiquette. So I really don't want to hear myself talk today. It is like not what I want to do. I know that most people have their cameras off. If that is the case, I really hope that you're utilizing the chat, because again, I don't want to be the only one that's contributing to this conversation. Because quite frankly, yes, I use social media, but you all are mostly the ones that use social media in your daily lives, the way that you're connecting with people, especially now that we are virtual. So the way that we're going to go about this, we're going to have a little bit of a discussion. We're going to talk about social media etiquette. We're going to do a little activity if we have time, and then we'll have a closing discussion again if we have time. So I want you to put in the chat. Again, you don't have to unmute yourself. This is very low, putting yourself out there, whatever I'm trying to say. This is, I want you to put in the chat if you are confident, if you feel confident for your professors to friend you, add you as a friend on social media outlets, put I am ready. If you're like, don't know about that, if you would consider friending your professors on social media outlets, but maybe after you clean things up a bit, put I'll think about it. And if you're like, absolutely not, please put in the chat, yikes. Oh, we've got a lot of I am readies to start. This is exciting. Okay, I'll think about it. Okay. I'm ready. Ooh, I like this. We're gonna have a great conversation today. But I actually hope that there's some more yikes. Yes, I hope that there's some more yikes, and I'll think about it, because I really do want to have a conversation that is real talk about what our social media personas are like right now. We live in a bubble right now, and even when we don't live in a bubble, I'm ready. I think yes. Even when we don't live in a bubble, this is a conversation that we need to have, because the impact of social media grows every day, right? We'll talk a little bit about that and what that means, but the utilization of social media grows every day, especially in this virtual format that we're living in. But I really do think that we need to have a real conversation about this, because this is sort of a bridge between communication, but also professionalism, what professionalism means, and the potential to get a job, right? We need to really talk about this, because it is something that we all have different perceptions on, which is great. We'll talk about that. Okay, so what is the big deal about social media? So it has literally become impossible almost to separate personal social media and professional social media. So for example, while Twitter is a social media platform, it's really often used as a professional platform, right? Networking, finding jobs, finding opportunities, following people, endorsing people. A lot of political officials, almost all of them have Twitter, right? Like there's a lot of professional things that happen on Twitter. You know, there's a lot of fun things, a lot of social things that happen on Twitter, sure, but there is a whole professional side of Twitter. And so that might, you know, skew your perception of that social media platform. But again, it's the truth that there's a very thin line between platforms that are used professionally and that are used personally. Another example, TikTok, right? I like barely even know what TikTok is, but I know that a lot of universities, even offices, a couple of our offices, not EOF, but a couple of our offices have TikTok profiles or whatever, and are putting content out in a professional manner to engage with students, right? Whether or not you agree with that, I don't know, but that is a platform that is highly social, but is now kind of being turned into this professional platform as well. You know, other than the fact that there's a thin line between the professional and the personal, you've heard this before, but once it's posted, it's there forever. Even if, you know, you've liked or retweeted or did something years and years and years ago, it's still there, right? If you have a Facebook page, you've seen the, you know, the memories section that pops up on your homepage that says 10 years ago, this happened, right? And you're like, oh, yikes, again, that you posted something 10 years ago, because you're probably not the same person you were 10 years ago. And we'll talk a little bit about that too. But that stuff never, ever goes away. And then the other thing that's really important is that nothing is private. That's it. Nothing is private. Even if you have it set to private, it's not private. And that's something that we really need to talk about, is that, you know, there's plenty of jobs out there that, in addition to asking for your name, your social security, you know, your address, your email, your personal cell phone number on the intake, they also might ask for your social media handles, right? Your Twitter handle, your Instagram handle, the TikTok, whatever it is. They might ask for that. That is a true reality. The other thing is that a lot of platforms, you know, who has actually read the privacy statements, the 7,000 page privacy statements of social media platforms, right? They update every once in a while. There's plenty of organizations that have the ability to like just completely bypass those privacy settings for things. So that's a very, very important thing to keep in mind as we kind of go through this conversation today. And again, I want to preface by saying this talk can be kind of taboo, right? Because everybody has very different perceptions on what is appropriate, what is professional, what should you put out there, what should you not put out there. And that's why I like to have these conversations, because it's necessary. Even though we have different perspectives on things, this is still a reality today that we need to consider what we're posting online. Okay, so now discussion time. Woo. So I want to hear from you all, whether it's unmuting or in the chat. I want to go through a couple staple platforms, talk about the pros and talk about the cons of each platform. So we're going to build this together. I don't have anything on here, as you can see. We're going to build this together, what we feel like the pros and the cons of each platform is in the realm of like networking, right? So thinking about how you're connecting with people, thinking about how you're viewing people. Maybe it's like the way that you view a business, or, you know, if you were an employer or if you're an employee, right? Thinking about the pros and cons of each platform in the space of networking. So for Facebook, drop it in the chat or unmute yourself. Oh, I'm going ahead of myself. I have to do this. Drop it in the chat or unmute yourself. What do you feel like are some pros or cons of Facebook? Okay, so in the chat we have promotes communication amongst social work professionals. Yeah, so I'm gonna also put, you can create groups, right? Keeping communication with your family, absolutely. I have to say that's probably the way that I use Facebook the most, especially during the pandemic. That has been a savior, right, of just keeping communication. Me and our close family got those Facebook portals, and so now we can talk to each other through that, and it's great. And then just in general, having the ability to message people, keep in contact with what people are doing, what life events are happening, absolutely. Let's see, find friends who were lost for years, absolutely. Stay in touch with those of long distance, definitely. Again, just seeing what people are doing, being able to connect with people, even if they're thousands of miles away. Okay, we got a con. So let's start to move into some cons, yeah? So for a con, we have it's outdated. Most young adults don't use Facebook, which is true and something to consider when we're talking about this from a networking lens. Most young adults, Facebook.
I didn't get this part out fast enough for the pros, but and plus I'm not really a good and fast typer, but I couldn't get it out fast enough that I'm the pros is I'm able to track how many irresponsible people that are not wearing masks that are congregating on social media.
Okay, so how
people I know. So
yeah,
it shows me, stay away.
Okay, so I think that's a good point. I think that can be a con, right? So in times of COVID, right, everybody again has different ideas of what they feel like is safe and what is acceptable when it comes to social distancing. So if you see one of your close friends who's out and about, doing a bunch of things that you feel like they're not supposed to, then maybe when they ask you to hang out later, you say no, right? And so I think that can be construed as a pro and a con because we make decisions based off what we see on social media. Yeah. We have another con, limited exposure. Only your friends can see your page on their timeline. Yep. And I think that there's different privacy settings for Facebook too, but for the most part, it is sort of a private platform, right? Unless you actively share all of your posts publicly, most of what you do is private. And so thinking of that from a lens of an employer, if they try and take a look at your Facebook page and maybe they aren't able to bypass, the privacy settings, if they don't get a lot out of it, then it's like, okay, well, this person's not really out there. Either they're really private or maybe they're hiding a bunch of stuff, right? Okay, so we have another con, sometimes comments meant to offer supports are incorrectly perceived and or receive negative responses backlash. Absolutely. The term keyboard warriors, right? Cyberbullying that happens. A lot of that does happen on Facebook. I'm going to put that in parentheses or in quotation marks. And cyberbullying. Let's see. Fake profiles, scams that can be any social media platform. Absolutely. Fake profiles and scams. I think that does happen a lot on Facebook for sure. People can post false statements. Yeah. So a lot of people get their news from Facebook. So I'm not going to write fake news, but I'm going to write, I don't know, untrustworthy news sources. How about that? Untrustworthy news sources. Okay, so let's move on to another one. I think this is a good idea of the pros and cons of Facebook. So now we have Instagram. Let's talk about the pros of Instagram. You can put them in the chat or you can unmute yourself. Let's try and get like 3 for each so we don't spend a whole lot of time on these. There's no pros.
I feel like I don't know about anyone else, but like around me, there's like a lot of people like they're trying to start their own business. So like advertising their business and just being a friend and like promoting it just so like they can get sales and stuff. I would say that.
Yeah, Instagram has kind of become a bit of like a business platform, right? People who have small businesses, there's a lot of like algorithms that happen where, you know, it'll say like sponsored, right? Where it's somebody's either like small business or Etsy store or whatever it is, based on the things that you like and share, you know, that'll be suggested to you. So there's a lot of business that happens on Instagram, sure. How about a con for Instagram? What cons for Instagram? I feel like one of the mentions of Facebook, like fake profiles, right? That's definitely something that happens a lot. Let's think about like if an employer were to look at your Instagram, right? Let's think about that too. What are some cons for that? What is this con? Not everyone wants to be referred to an Instagram account when looking to support Black businesses. Okay, I think that can go for any business, right? I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that. Maybe you mean like in lieu of a website? Is that it? Using Instagram. Okay, in lieu of a website. Using Instagram in lieu of websites. That does happen a lot. Reposting negative. It's very easy to repost negative things. Absolutely. I think another thing is that with Instagram, there's either like the privacy setting or the public setting, right? There's no way to differentiate those two, right? With Facebook or something, you can, right? You can select whether you want something to be private or whether you want something to be public. But with Instagram, it's one or the other for your entire profile, right? You can do like the close friends stories and whatnot. So that is a little bit of a different thing. But for the most part, if you have a public profile, then anybody and everybody can take a look at what you're posting. So that is something to consider as well. All right, we'll move along for the sake of time. How about Twitter? Maybe this will be the last one that we do for the sake of time. What are the pros of Twitter? Oh, that was a good one. Yeah. What are the pros of Twitter? I'm still on that, but I'm going to add this.
I feel like Twitter is hard because well, for me, like how my feed is set up is just like a completely different platform from Instagram and Facebook. So I would say like for me, a lot of the thoughts that I have in my head are like the same thoughts that other people have on Twitter. So it makes me not feel alone. So I don't know how to like put that in words.
Yeah, so just feels maybe more of like a social network. Does that kind of capture that? A pro is that Trump can no longer tweet. I think that everybody feels that way, hopefully. Yeah, so I think that is, I'm going to actually put that as a con, and I'm not saying that any type of way other than there's a lot of like censorship that can happen with Twitter, and maybe that is a pro and a con. So censorship, and I've known a lot of people, particularly activists, right, who have gotten censored for certain things by Twitter or by Facebook. Or maybe it's lack of censorship, right? So maybe certain people, maybe those who were mentioned already, should have been banned a long time ago, right? And so I'm going to put censorship or lack of censorship. Okay. Pros that you can find out what's trending around the world for like news, absolutely. And I think something else that's a pro is that you get like real information from people, right? So Twitter is a very, Instagram could be a very misconstrued platform where you sort of like create this image of yourself, right? Twitter is a little bit more direct. So direct from sources. So maybe that's a little bit more of your like authentic self, right? Okay, so we're gonna move on. And we're really running out of time. So I did want to kind of switch gears. Let's see. Maybe I won't. We don't have time for this. Okay, I'm just thinking out loud. Anyway, so I think that what we'll do is go straight into a conversation about some etiquette things because I want to make sure that I cover those. I don't know what's happening to my computer. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, we have to skip that. Okay, so how can I use social media to aid rather than hinder my career? Something that I really like to touch on a lot is branding. Now, I am no branding expert, and maybe there's some business majors in here that are branding experts. However, branding is really important when it comes to who you're putting onto social media, what you're putting onto your social media pages, and is it consistent with who you are, right? That's the ultimate goal of a brand is like, if you think of Target, you can think of very specific things when you think of Target. If you think of Amazon, you think of very specific things when you think of Amazon. When you think of Colin Kaepernick, you think of very specific things when it comes to Colin Kaepernick, right? So there's just certain people that do a really good job of branding. There's certain organizations that do a really good job of branding. And that's how you should be portraying yourself on these platforms as well. It doesn't need to be perfect, but ultimately everything that you put should be consistent with like who you are. I think that branding can be a very authentic process. It doesn't need to be that you put on this big persona, but when somebody talks to you in person, when they see your, social media pages, they shouldn't be surprised, right? They shouldn't be like, oh, I never would have thought that they would have, posted that, right? So talking about branding or thinking about branding when you're posting things is very, very important. This is the time to start using professional career sites. So LinkedIn, although it may be boring, it should be something that you are regularly using, right? So at this time, again, most of you are sophomores in the room. This is something that can help set up or be an extension of your resume. So when people are looking for, information on their candidates, right? If you're going for an internship or you're going for a full-time job, those employers may be looking at social media pages or just Googling you to see what comes up. And if you Google yourself and you have a LinkedIn page, it's very likely going to pop up. And so that is something that you do want to put out there for yourself in a way to network, but also in a way to enhance your resume, like I said. Something that you should always be doing is a sweep once or twice a year. So again, if you have Facebook and you've gotten those like, oh, you posted this 10 years ago, and you're like, oh my gosh, why did I post that 10 years ago, right? Yes, there are certain things you should clean out, right? Maybe there's things that are from 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even a year ago that you don't really feel like are on brand with who you are today, because we're constantly evolving, constantly developing as people. And so that may not line up, and maybe you want to kind of get rid of that, right? It's not a way to hide things. And so again, being very intentional about like, if it's not offensive and maybe you're just young and thought something was interesting, so you shared it. I don't know, like your food one day, you just felt like the need to share that. Then keep it, sure. Then your social media shows the evolution of your growth. But if it's something that you're like, I don't know if I feel that way today, and I don't want people to think that I feel that way today, maybe you should just delete it. Connecting with companies and organizations that you're interested in on a lot of things, there's things like an activity log. Again, these are things that are maybe in the privacy statements of social media platforms, but you don't necessarily read them. But people are able to see what you're sharing, what you're posting, what you're liking. And so it's very important to make sure that you are connecting and liking and sharing things that are companies and organizations that go along with your brand, right? A lot of times people, like employers, will look at who you like on your social media pages. So maybe they're not directly looking at your profile, but they'll be looking at who you are interested in and who you admire, who you follow. And that can influence decisions of people about them. And then in general, when you're posting, I really want you to stop and think, what am I trying to convey with this post? If you're venting, maybe we shouldn't post that. And the previous activity that maybe I'll show you one thing for was some screenshots that I have of people posting on the Rutgers-Camden app, right? On the newsfeed of the Rutgers-Camden app, and talking about professors, talking about this person is the worst. Is anybody else surviving this class? Because I can't believe they graded like this. Well, how do I get this person fired? Why am I paying this person with my tuition dollars, right? And yet we all see that. I'm staff and I see that. All faculty have access to the Rutgers app, and they all see that, right? And so then what does that staff person or faculty person then think about that student that's using this public platform to vent as opposed to directing, the conversation to the problem, to the person? Again, whether that's right or wrong, I don't know, but there are always going to be consequences and effects to the things that we do. So you have to think, what am I trying to convey? What do I want to convey to potential employers? And does this align with my brand? So again, I'm not a business person, but I think branding is something that everybody should have somewhat of an interest in and learn a bit more about to make sure that your content and who you are aligns together. So how to clean up your social media, again, just to be conscious of time. Google yourself. I know that that's like probably an unpopular opinion to do because maybe you don't want to see what's out there, but nobody's super famous in this room, I don't think. So Google yourself, right? See what shows up, because that's the first thing that employers are going to do when they see your application and they're considering to hire you. Make sure your profile pictures are professional on all of your platforms. And so even if you have private profiles on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, just make sure your actual picture is a bit more professional. If you can avoid it, don't delete everything. So how I mentioned before about taking a clean sweep of what you had going on maybe 10 years ago. Again, you don't want to look like you're hiding something. So be kind of conscious. Like if it was something that was harmless, keep it, right? If it was something that was maybe a little offensive, maybe you should delete it. But again, remembering that most people can find things that are deleted, even after it's been years that they've been deleted, right? Let me skip ahead. Let's see. What was the one that okay. So don't forget about all of your profiles. So I know we talked a bit about Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. But things like Pinterest, if you have a Pinterest and you're, saving and liking maybe like questionable things, then that's something that people can, take a look at what you're interested in too. And all of these things come back to this idea that we do make assumptions on people based on the content that they put out. So let me back up for a moment. We have about 10 minutes left. So what I want to do is, let's do some breakouts. I do want to have a discussion about this, again, where I'm not the only one talking, because I'm curious to hear about people's perceptions of what does it mean to be professional? What is appropriate to post on social media? Where do you kind of stand with your own content today? And so I will put you all into some breakout rooms, and then we'll come back and we'll talk, and that'll be how we close out. So let me see. I'll share the messages in the chat, or the, not messages, the questions in the chat. Yeah, that's good. Okay. So when you see it pop up on your screen, just go ahead and join, and then I'll come around and put the message or the questions in the chat. Questions, view, 4 minutes. Cool. All right, and breakout. Great. All right, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Okay, so
Sarah, that was not enough time to talk about anything.
well, that's good. That means you had a great conversation.
I'm crying.
If you got cut off, then let's just like bring it back to the group. What were you talking about when you got cut off? That can be Caitlin or anybody else.
Well, like,
No, we didn't get cut off. We just didn't have enough time to discuss all the questions. We only went over like, how do you feel about businesses when they have very outdated social media pages?
Okay.
Where's she at? Take it away, Sabria. We only talked about how do we feel about businesses when they have very outdated social media pages, and Sabria brought something up.
Oh my gosh, I forgot what I said. I said if all of their stuff is outdated, it makes me like not interested. Like now I don't want to know more about your company or anything that you're doing because all of this is old information. So what am I going to gain to really know about your business, your platform that you're trying to have?
Yes, that is a perfect point. And that goes to the point of, I don't know if anybody saw, but on the very last slide that I showed, the last piece of advice was to post regularly. And that can be kind of a controversial idea, right? So Michael D'Italia, who was on here earlier, who's a staff professional, and said, I'm not on social media, right? And that's how he chooses to live his life, and that's okay. However, thinking about people who are trying to break into industries or break into career fields, you have to think of yourself as a brand or as a business. And if people are looking for you and when they're looking to hire you, then is there going to be content on there that they can relate to or say like, oh yeah, you know, this is what this person is like. For example, I'm trying to look for a contractor right now. And if there's people who I'm like, oh, I don't know, because they haven't posted since 2012. Like, are they even in business? I don't know, right? And so thinking about that for you all, like just having some sort of regular content, it can be like once every 6 months, right? It doesn't even need to be very often, but having something that you're sharing that gives people an idea about yourself. Absolutely. Anything else? Somebody said that they agreed with Caitlin about having not enough time, which means I hope that you had some good conversation or started to. So anything else, any other questions that people had answered?
I disagree with Sabria when I said I don't like when I go on the website, like the restaurant across from where I live, JoJo's. I go in there and I order something, and then I go there to pick it up, and they'll tell me a different price, and I'm like, that's not the price that's online. That makes me mad.
Yeah, having consistency, absolutely. So that goes with building your brand, right? How I mentioned earlier that if somebody talks to you, they shouldn't then be surprised that you have this whole different persona on your social media pages, right? Yes, I think that you know there's a level of, yes, you build your brand on a website, right? Like if you meet I don't know, if you see a celebrity on the street, right? They may not be the exact same person that they are on their website, but you want to keep some level of consistency. S. Taylor, you put, sometimes social media will deter us from doing business with people with exceptional skills. Yes. So can we talk a little bit more about that? And can we talk a little bit about the last question? So I'll put it in the chat again. But what does professional mean to you? So that point about it sometimes deters us, right? So is that okay that, you know, if somebody doesn't have regular content, what does that mean? Like, what if you just don't like social media? Should an employer, you know, not hire you because they don't know what you're about based on your social media pages? And then in that same breath, what does professional mean to you? I know we have like 1 minute left, but if somebody could share their thoughts on this, I'd appreciate it. You can put your
I think
thoughts in the chat as well.
I think professional means being able to sell yourself in a professional manner. Whatever you say you are should also convey from your social media pages. And now I understand the two have to be a connect, because then they'll be looking at you like, well, this is not what your social media says you are, or by your likes and things like that. So I think it's very important to be professional, and it also starts with our social media pages.
Yeah. So I appreciate that thought, Gina. We're of course out of time. And I think that this is one of those conversations that can go on forever. And so I really ultimately with this workshop hope that this has sort of planted a seed for you all. This is a conversation that you should be having with yourself, with your peers, with your mentors, counselors, whoever, about what do these things mean? What does professional mean, right? I have tattoos. I'll be very transparent. I have tattoos, and a lot of people would deem that unprofessional, right? So a lot of people would then say, well, if they don't want me because of my tattoos, then I don't want them. And there's a whole nother conversation that we can have around that. Right and wrong is a very big gray area here, but ultimately there are certain things like we talked about today and went over, like building your brand. In the comments, it's being professional, in my opinion, means handling oneself in an ethical manner, being honest about your abilities and capabilities. I think that's a great definition, right? Because that's speaking to who you are as an authentic person, your authentic self, and having a very kind of universal definition of professionalism. But a lot of people would deem certain things professional and other things unprofessional. And then where does social media fall in the middle of that? So again, we could talk about this forever. I appreciate you all for indulging me in this conversation. And also, again, listening to Michael D'Italia in the beginning. I hope that you all do take some of the things that we talked about today, think about it. I hope it's planted a seed, but then I also hope that you've thought about what Michael D'Italia has talked about regarding leadership, because all of these things tie together. So if you can check out his workshops, please do. I will put that link to the Engage page in the chat again. But otherwise, that is all that I have for you today. So thank you all so much, again, for indulging me in this conversation, and enjoy the rest of your day. Like you said, please get outside today. It is gorgeous out. So do you need your RUID? Nope, actually, yes. Can you send me your RUID? Send it privately in the chat. I'll be here for a second.
No minds.
Yes, just S Taylor, because everyone else I think has their name up. So I think I'm good on everyone else. But thank you all. I'm here if you have questions. Otherwise, get outside, enjoy the day. Appreciate you all, and I'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.